No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me.
So, I'm trying to think where to start. So my testimony kind of starts of when I was a kid. Growing up, for those who don't know, I have a sister who's 2 years older than me, and she's special needs. At the age of 7 years old, I remember my dad vividly sitting me down and looking me face to face in the eye and telling me, son, your mother and father can only do so much for your sister. It's time for you to step up. It's time for you to be the man of the house and look after your sister and keep her safe when we're not around. So when I was 7 years old, my life changed completely. I went from thinking about myself to my sister and caring for everything about my sister. I was in charge of basically a lot of responsibility for the age of 7. And so, going through elementary school, it was rough for me. I was tormented, I was bullied, really, really bad. To the point where I didn't want to go to school in the mornings. I was this tall, lanky, smart kid that just everyone loved to poke fun of for some reason. And I just remember sitting there not knowing why, but just hating myself because people thought I was funny. Not because what I said was funny, but who I was funny. And I became to hate myself because of that. I was so ashamed of myself and I had no self-esteem at all. And so being bullied all my life in elementary school put me in some really, really dark places in my life. At 8 years old, I was in my room, and these lies that people were telling me turned into depression. And the depression turned into suicide. And these thoughts of suicide became more and more real. To the point when I was 8 years old, I tried suicide 3 times. First time, I remember sitting in my room, thinking about getting everything ready, and just ending it. And then something stopped me. Next week, came back. I got everything ready. I was about to do it. Something stopped me. The third week, my final time, I was on top of a step stool with a belt tied to the closet. And I was a kick away. I was a kick away from leaving. And that was my solution to my problems. I was just going to run, and I was just going to leave this earth because I couldn't do it anymore. I hated myself that much that I wanted to leave. And something hit me. When I was a kid, I didn't know what happened, but I remember sitting on that step stool and being one kick away from just being gone, just being nothing again. And something stopped me and told me to get off that ladder and take the belt off my neck. So I did. Didn't think anything of it. Looking back, it was God. But I was 7 years old, I didn't know that. So I kept that a secret my entire life. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want anyone knowing that I dealt with stuff like that. Because I was ashamed that I dealt with stuff like that. I thought I was different. I thought I was weird for that. I bottled it up all my life. Until my junior year of high school came. We were sitting down, we were doing the suicide prevention videos. And every year, no, I don't need to talk to no one. No, I'm fine. No, leave me alone, I'm good. Until I get a call from the counselor's office. They said, we need you to come down. My first thought was, crap, my friend selected yes. I'm going to have to defend my friend. Who is it? Who's struggling? I sit down, they turn the paper to me. It was my name and it had yes. And I don't know about you all, but in that moment, there's only one reason why I switched from no to yes. It was because of God. And I sat there and I told myself, no, you're not going to say it. And I felt God come over me and tell me, don't be ashamed of who you are. Don't be ashamed of what you've gone through. Don't hide this anymore. So I came out. I told my counselors everything I dealt with. I told them everything. I told them I've been bullied all of elementary school, all of middle school, that I was a kick away from leaving this earth. And that it was just a blessing that I was in this office right now talking to this counselor. So she calls the school psychologist in. I told her that, I remember telling the school psychologist, just do anything not to tell my parents. Don't let my parents know about this. I will do anything for you to not tell my parents. Sadly, that's not how it works. They had to tell my parents. I remember coming home that night, and my mom was hysterically crying at the dinner table. And I tried to play it off and ask her how work went. And she said, "You know why I'm crying. Why'd you not let us know? Why were you struggling and not telling us?" And I felt so ashamed of myself. And then I went to talk to my dad. My dad cried. Only time I've ever seen my dad cry in my life. And for you guys, I hope you never experience that. Looking your dad in the face and him crying for something you did. I felt ashamed. I felt embarrassed. I felt like a disappointment to my father. I felt like I was a son that was never going to live up to his expectations. I was a broken son that he didn't want. So my junior year was a mess. I cried all the time to myself. I cried with my mom, and me and my dad got a lot closer, but we never talked about it. So I get sent to this psychologist. See the psychologist for a couple months. And things were great. I'm seeing a psychologist, right? Fixed everything. Not. Going my senior year of high school, I get out my first day of seeing a psychologist. I kept telling myself, you can figure this out. You're going to defeat this. And when you defeat this, you can do anything with your life. And that was the biggest lie the enemy ever told me. It was the biggest lie. Because all my life I told myself, I'm going to defeat this. I'm going to defeat all this weird stuff that's going on in my head because no one else can relate. I'm going to do it for myself. So my senior year of high school, everything keeps getting worse. Suicidal thoughts start coming back daily. My best friends called my psychologist to get me back in. And I hated them for it. But if it wasn't for them, I don't know where I would have been. So I'll go back my second wave to the psychologist, right? And I'd tell her, like, why me? Like, why am I struggling with this? Please tell me why I'm different. Why am I weird? Why do I think like this? Why does no one else think like this? But I think like this to myself and I can't tell anyone. And she didn't have an answer. And so I just politely told her that, she was really good at her job, but this isn't helping me anymore. So I left. I got out. I told my parents I was fine. I told my parents I'm fine, don't worry about me. So I go off to college, right? And I'm like, college, this is going to be awesome for me. I'm finally going to defeat this once and for all, and I'm going to be a changed man, and it's going to be awesome. And it was nothing like that. So how I ran from my depression, my anxiety, and my suicide is I filled it up with 3 things: drugs, alcohol, and women. And I thought that was the answer. Every weekend I thought, this is how you live your life. That was the culture I was in. I was like, this is how you're going to live your life, and you'll be fine. And it was great. So I woke up the next morning with a splitting hangover, or I wasn't high anymore, or the girl walked out of my room. And it was just this constant cycle that I was chasing. And that next morning, all the wave of depression and anxiety came back. 10 times harder. And it never stopped. And that's how I lived my life. So then, fast forward another year to my junior year this year. I remember laying in bed, not being able to sleep. And not just being able to sleep for one night, not being able to sleep for months. So now I'm a junior in college with anxiety, depression, suicide, now insomnia. Can't sleep. Running on 4 hours of sleep, 3-4 hours of sleep every night, waiting for my body to just collapse. And I'll tell myself, okay, I'm going to go to bed at 7:30 because I know my mind's going to get all worried and my body will pass out at 12:30. So that's what I did. That didn't work. So then I would go throughout my day physically exhausting myself. I wake up in the morning and I'd work out. Then I'd go and do some baseball stuff. Then I'd work out again. And then I'd run again. To the point where I came back to my room and I had nothing else to do but to just pass out and my body to collapse because I was pushing myself to the physical brinks because I knew I couldn't sleep by myself. That didn't work. And there were so many nights that I just sat there and I could feel the enemy just on me. And I could feel the enemy just rejoicing, telling me, like, you can defeat me. You can defeat me. Why don't you just defeat me already? You're just feeding me with lies and lies. And I sat there for 2 weeks straight and I cried out to the Lord. got on my hands and knees, crying, yelling out to the Lord just to help me. That's all I said. I'd say, help me 1,000 times. I fell asleep every single time, 5 minutes after I prayed. Every single time. So a week after all that sorts of stuff happened, I said, I'm done. I'm done running God. After church one day, I went and got baptized and finally decided to commit to the life that I always thought I was living. So all my life, I thought I was living this Christian life. I'm a Christian boy, right? I go to church every Sunday. My parents are Christians. My parents raised me in a church, right? But I was running from God. The whole time I was living this double life thinking I was a Christian, but I was dealing with stuff that I didn't let God deal with. You know, and it took me 15 years to realize that we need Jesus in the darkest of times. Not just the highs, not just the middles, the darkest of times. You know, it took me 15 years to realize that I couldn't do it by myself. I didn't have the strength, but Jesus did. And Jesus had the strength to defeat the devil. And he did it by rising from the grave. And once I realized that, I surrendered my life. I said, I'm done running God. I'm done trying to defeat him. Because you've already done it, I want you to defeat him again for me. So, just a couple takeaways. First off, Jesus says it. Love everyone. You never know what someone's going through. They may put on a mask and say they're doing fine, but deep down inside, they don't know what's going on. And they just want one person to say, hey, how you doing? Or they just want one person to stop them and say, hey, I appreciate you. You're awesome. Whether they can admit it or not. The second thing is, at the darkest of times, we need to let Jesus in. So many times, we get in those dark places and we want to shut the door and say, Jesus, I'm fine, I got this. Leave me alone. Because that's what I did for 15 years. I said, Jesus, leave me alone. I'm thinking about suicide, but I can do this by myself. And Jesus just sat there patiently. He sat there patiently for 15 years to let me finally just say, Jesus, I need your help. Jesus, I need your help. And it takes courage. It takes strength. But for not one moment do I regret anything. I don't regret any of those hard times, because if it wasn't for those struggles that I went through, I would have never met Jesus the way I did. I would never experience God the way I did. I would never see God the way I see him now. I would never experience his love like I see him now and feel him with me. And it took me too long to realize that. But I don't regret a thing. Because these burns in my life as a kid left these voids in my heart. And I tried to fill these voids with everything on earth that possibly could make me feel better. And God was sitting there just saying, when are you going to listen to me? When are you going to let me feel those? When I finally filled those, I'll tell you guys, greatest day of my life. Hands down. Better than anything I could do in the classroom, better than anything I do on a baseball field. Greatest day of my life. Because now I have this passion in my life, and this burning passion for the Lord that I've never experienced before. Because his love filled those voids. He filled those voids and built me back stronger. And so from my testimony, I developed my life verse. It's Luke 1:37. It's an angel talking to Mary before she gives birth. And Mary's doubting that she's about to give birth to Jesus. The angel looks at her and says, for nothing's impossible with God. So if it's possible for God to save my life and to change my life for the better, it's possible for you too. I promise you.